My parents stole my $120,000 MBA fund for my golden sister's dream house. Justice, karma, and Uncle Jake's ruthless plan restored it all. I never imagined I'd be on Reddit posting stuff like this, but here I am. Recently, I, 28F, learned that my parents had embezzled my $120,000 MBA money to assist my sister Ashley, 35F, and her fiancé Nathan, 37M, in purchasing a home. I'm still trying to comprehend the extent of their betrayal, and the entire scenario feels unreal. Allow me to walk you through the first part of this nightmare. Dad's parents, my grandparents, were extremely well off and always placed a high priority on education. They were traditional in the finest sense of the word. They valued hard work, conserving money, and making long-term investments. I didn't get to visit them very frequently because they lived in a different state, but whenever we spoke or met, they expressed their concern for my future. Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you, my grandmother used to say, and now I see how ironic that is. My grandfather died 3 years ago following a brief illness. Even though it was awful, Grandma was still with us. She was the family's pillar of support, recognizing each birthday and accomplishment and sending heartfelt cards and care packages. We also lost her last year. On the day of her death, I was sitting in my apartment going over every letter she had ever sent me. I was unaware at the time that she and Grandpa had been constructing something much larger for my future, but each one included some life lessons and typically a modest check for your education fund. The allocation first appeared equitable when their will was read. My parents' savings and home were inherited. Ashley received family treasures and all of grandmother's jewelry, which was valued at tens of thousands of dollars. A sizable education fund was bequeathed to me, especially for my MBA courses. This money was to be utilized only for my schooling, according to the will. My parents were assigned to oversee it till I required it because I was already employed. I was appreciative at the time that my grandparents had given my future such serious consideration. I never once imagined my parents would tamper with the fund. In retrospect, though, I ought to have recognized the warning indications. Ashley has always been our family's golden child, even from my earliest recollections. It's difficult to say without coming across as resentful, but she was the person my parents loved the most. She was great at all she did. She was incredibly gifted, diligent, and unique. I can still clearly recall graduating from high school. I recently won a prominent science competition, received a full scholarship to college, and was valedictorian. My parents were using their phones and hardly paying attention when I looked out at the audience during my speech. They were ecstatic when Ashley, who had already dropped out of college twice, revealed later that night that she was considering a career in teaching. "You are simply amazing with kids," they exclaimed. I received a brief good job acknowledgement for my accomplishments that day. Continue. Throughout my life, this trend persisted. I got a position at a famous company after working hard and graduating with honors. Over the past 6 years, I have ascended the corporate ladder, gaining the respect and admiration of both superiors and colleagues. As a senior project manager, I oversee a group of 15 employees and manage accounts worth millions of dollars. However, to my parents, I was always just the sensible one, the one who got away with it because I was naturally smart. Ashley, on the other hand, changed jobs before becoming a teacher. Nathan is the head zookeeper at our neighborhood zoo, and she is currently the kindergarten administrator at a tiny private school. I don't have any personal problems with them, and they're decent enough folks. Although they appear content and are competent in their careers, their combined income is at best meager. They had been discussing the necessity of purchasing a home nonstop for the past year. Each family meal became a debate about the cost of real estate and how they were throwing money away on rent. They would lament the unfairness of the market while admiring homes that were much beyond their means. Even though Ashley and Nathan are in their mid-30s, they are still viewed as young people in need of assistance, and my parents would nod empathetically and say things like, "You deserve a nice house," and "It's so hard for young people these days." I began working on my MBA program applications about a month ago. I had been preparing this relocation for years, so it wasn't an abrupt decision. I've done a ton of program research, strategically developed my profession, and kept up a flawless work record. I want to enroll in a prestigious program that will enable me to advance into executive leadership roles at my present employer. Every C-level executive has an MBA from a reputable university, and I'm resolved to do the same. I mentioned the education fund to my parents one evening. Because the application costs alone for prestigious MBA programs can amount to thousands of dollars, I needed to know exactly how much was accessible. My first genuine danger indicator should have been their response. "Don't worry about it," my dad murmured, shifting uneasily in his chair. My mother hurriedly added, "Just concentrate on your applications for the time being, we'll talk when the time comes." They then abruptly shifted the conversation to Ashley and Nathan's house hunting. I initially tried to dismiss it, thinking perhaps they were simply being clumsy with the papers. However, something didn't feel right. I brought it up again, more bluntly, a week later. I clarified that I needed to know if the funds were available because I needed to budget for applying to multiple prestigious schools. They dropped the bomb at that point. "We used the MBA money for Ashley," my mother replied in the most casual way possible. "She is purchasing a home with Nathan." Thinking I must have misheard, I gazed at her. My dad added that Ashley needed it right now, and that it wouldn't be fair for me to get a free ride when Ashley had worked so hard with student loans, when I asked her to repeat herself. I went crazy. I'm not proud of my response, but it was the release of years' worth of repressed annoyance. I insisted on knowing how they could harm me and how they could embezzle the funds my grandparents had set aside expressly for my schooling. The will had been clear about how that money was to be utilized, so I pointed out that it was prohibited. My mother simply shrugged her eyes, as if I were exaggerating. She said, "You'll figure it out. It's not as though you can't borrow money like everyone else." They pretended that they had done nothing wrong and that neither my future nor my grandparents' wishes mattered. I then brought up taking legal action. Even though I'm not a lawyer, it's obvious that what they did was unlawful. And what did they do, do you know? They chuckled. They laughed aloud, not merely chuckling. "With what money?" my father asked, staring me in the eye. "Even a lawyer is out of your price range." Additionally, my mother said, "Don't be silly. This is a family-run enterprise." The humiliation I felt at the time is beyond words. Stunned, I stood there. The realization that they had always viewed me as an afterthought came to me suddenly. Someone whose future they could forgo in order to help Ashley. They didn't care about my financial freedom, my prosperous career, or my academic accomplishments. I would remain the underdog forever. I had trouble sleeping that night. I couldn't stop thinking about how my grandparents had trusted my parents to act morally. They were unaware of the true nature of my home life. Since it didn't seem worth it, I never told anyone about how I was treated. I mean, I wasn't being mistreated, was I? They simply didn't care about me as much as they did about Ashley. They weren't violent. I arrived at work early the following morning and asked to speak with my employer, Mr. Thompson, in private. Since I started working for the company, he has been a mentor to me, therefore he's not just any boss. He has always encouraged me to pursue my career goals and has seen me rise from a junior role to team leader. More significantly, he has experience in corporate law and keeps up relationships with leading law firms. I also intended to get in touch with my dad's cousin Uncle Jake. He is a prosperous businessman who consistently seemed to see through the partiality of my parents. Although he wasn't there much when I was growing up, he always showed genuine interest in my accomplishments and future aspirations. In addition, he is the only person in my family who has greater influence and accomplishment than my parents. Something inside of me exploded when my parents made fun of me, even though I never wanted things to go ugly. Since I've always been the quiet one, the sensible one who never caused a stir, they assumed I had no influence. However, they are going to discover that the daughter they have consistently undervalued is much more powerful than they initially thought. First update. Since my last post, which was 2 weeks ago, a lot has transpired. Things proceeded more quickly than I had anticipated following my visit with Mr. Thompson. In addition to giving me his whole support, he put me in touch with a buddy at Wilson & Partners, one of the best law companies in the city. He reminded me, this is about holding your parents accountable and respecting your grandparents' wishes, not just about money. It was enlightening to meet the attorneys. They attested to the fact that my parents' acts clearly violated the terms of the will and their fiduciary duties. Finding out that my parents might be charged with a crime for their acts shocked me the most. And the lawyers found something unsettling. Long before they told me, my parents had begun moving the funds to Ashley's account months before. Uncle Jake's intervention, however, was the true game changer. Within hours of my contacting him on LinkedIn, he gave me a call. He responded in a way that exceeded my expectations. "I always knew your parents played favorites," he replied. "But stealing from their own daughter? That crosses every line. Don't worry about the legal fees, I'm handling everything." Uncle Jake was more than simply a talker. He did something right away. He assembled a group of attorneys with expertise in estate law and engaged a forensic accountant to track down every penny of the pilfered money. They gathered enough proof in a matter of days to demonstrate that my parents had spent months draining the college money in a methodical manner. The initial altercation took place on Friday. I was called by my parents' attorney in an attempt to reach a family settlement. In exchange for me dropping any legal action, they promised to cover some of the MBA expenses. Uncle Jake responded harshly, saying, "You will either be charged with a crime or return the entire sum plus interest and penalties." No negotiations will take place. The response from my parents was invaluable. They began sending me mails non-stop. How could you involve outsiders in family matters? We were going to help you eventually. You're destroying this family. Without replying, I sent everything to Uncle Jake's legal team. He then disclosed the second part of his strategy. In addition to pursuing the money, he is advocating for a thorough examination of my parents' financial transactions, implying that there may be further irregularities that we are now unaware of. Yesterday, Ashley finally spoke up. She claimed in a lengthy email to me that she was clueless about the source of the house money. Mom and Dad said they had savings set aside for us, she wrote in her letter. I never thought they would steal your money. She concluded by requesting that I exercise common sense and come up with a family solution. I showed Uncle Jake her email. His answer was straightforward. Send it on to the attorneys. It is proof that she was aware of the money after it had already happened, but she did not try to return it. She is therefore complicit. This morning was the most fulfilling time. In a hurry, the lawyer for my parents called Uncle Jake. The forensic accountant apparently found that my parents had started utilizing their power of attorney to transfer money even before my grandma passed away. This can greatly increase the charges. Right now, my parents are making a valiant effort to turn around. Mom begged me to contact them in a heartfelt voicemail, stating that they would find a way to pay back the money. Although Dad acknowledged in an email that they may have made a mistake, he maintained that they were just trying to help the family. Uncle Jake gave straightforward advice. Avoid answering anything. Give them a panic. When you were weak, they made fun of you? Now it's their turn to feel helpless. All of this has been made possible by Mr. Thompson's tremendous assistance. In addition to producing an excellent reference letter, he has already approved my leave of absence for when I begin my MBA school. He informed me today, you're displaying remarkable composure. Not many people could handle this situation with such professionalism. Unless my parents return the entire cash plus fines, the legal team is getting ready to bring official charges the following week. Uncle Jake predicts that in order to pay for everything, they will have to sell some assets, but in his own words, that's their problem, not yours. Until this is addressed, I will be staying with a friend. Building security had been told not to let my parents into my apartment when they attempted to arrive. In order to record any attempts by my parents to get in touch with me, Uncle Jake also engaged a private investigator. If required, this material might be used to demonstrate harassment. Second update. 3 weeks have passed since my last report, and things have significantly worsened. At last, I am able to provide the specifics of our legal strategies development. Much more was revealed by the forensic inquiry than we had anticipated. During our first court filing, the first bombshell was revealed. Uncle Jake's team found that my parents had been misusing their power of attorney over my grandmother's funds in her last months in addition to stealing my MBA fund. Long before my grandma died, the evidence showed that they were methodically shifting funds around in order to transfer them to Ashley. During the initial hearing, their lawyer's expression was invaluable. It is obvious that he was unaware of the severity of their financial misdeeds. He really requested a break to speak with my parents after our legal team showed them the recorded chronology of transactions. Later on, I found out that he confronted my parents for not telling him certain facts, and he is now thinking of leaving their case. The previous caregiver for my grandmother made the most startling admission. Seeing our legal notification in the estate documents, she contacted Uncle Jake. It turns out that my grandmother had made it very clear that the money was only for my education by bringing up the MBA fund with my parents several times in her last months. These exchanges were also recorded in the caregiver's notes. She had been documenting every family conversation in a care diary. Ashley's participation has also changed in an intriguing way. She hired her own attorney after realizing the legal ramifications of accepting stolen funds. Because they expected her to support the family, this caused a serious gap between her and our parents. My parents were in a panic when her lawyer suggested that she should keep her distance from the matter. The state of the house has gotten especially disorganized. The acquisition is currently being investigated by the court since the down payment was made using stolen money. The problem has been communicated to Ashley and Nathan's mortgage lender, who is currently examining the loan application. A fraud investigation might be initiated if my parents falsified any of the financial records they co-signed. Unexpectedly, Uncle Jake's crew also discovered that my parents had been informing members of my extended family that I had consented to give Ashley my MBA fund. They seemed to have been preparing their defense in case the money transfer was questioned, as they had been fabricating this story for months. Now, a number of family members have come forward with emails and messages from my parents that support this untrue story. The deposition was the most satisfying development. My father made an effort to keep his haughty demeanor until Uncle Jake's attorney produced proof of their calculated scheme. It was quite painful to watch him struggle to describe what they had done. My mother really lost it when she acknowledged that they had no intention of repaying the money they had stolen. They have been almost hilarious in their attempts to control the damage. Despite having numerous recorded conversations with my grandmother and her attorneys, they are now attempting to assert that they were perplexed by the wording of the will. 2 of their attorneys have already resigned, so this is their 3rd attorney, and they are frantically trying to reach a settlement. The final terms were outlined by our legal staff, who made it apparent that there was no opportunity for discussion. Every penny they took would have to be paid back, with interest that would start to accrue the day they took the money. They would also be in charge of paying for all of our legal fees, including the forensic investigation, which had become quite expensive. We also insisted that they stop gaslighting and attempting to rewrite the facts and submit a formal written admission of their misconduct. Last but not least, they would need to sign a legally enforceable contract committing them to stop communicating with me in any way. No more utilizing family members as messengers, deceptive messages, or unexpected visits. The socioeconomic status of my parents is deteriorating. Several of their acquaintances have quietly told me how shocked they are, and word has spread throughout their neighborhood. My father's golf club is reconsidering his membership, and my mother's bridge club asked her to resign as treasurer. People don't feel comfortable hanging around with someone who would steal from their own child, it turns out. Ashley's circumstances are also getting worse. Concerned about having a principal embroiled in financial malfeasance, the board of directors at her school has set a meeting to review her position. Because Nathan co-signed loan documents that may include misleading information, their place of employment is undergoing an ethics assessment. The last development is quite pleasing. Do you recall how my folks snickered when I brought up the idea of filing a lawsuit? In order to stop any more financial fraud, Uncle Jake's team recently submitted a motion to freeze their assets. Within hours, their attorney contacted them, pleading for a settlement conference. Uncle Jake is still brutal in his methods. In response to my parents' attempts to persuade him to be loyal to the family, he sent a caustic email with the entire extended family copied on it. Family loyalty? You lost any right to talk about loyalty when you stole from your daughter and laughed in her face. Get ready to face the consequences of your actions. My parents are getting really upset because I haven't spoken to them at all. They have turned to using friends and family to get in touch on their behalf, but each effort simply strengthens our allegation of harassment. Every day, their desperation becomes more apparent. 3rd update. 4 months have passed since my last update, and I can now finally reveal the story's resolution. The outcome of the last court procedures is more heartbreaking for my parents than any of us could have imagined. Allow me to explain how justice was ultimately achieved. Let me start by sharing my favorite moment, which was the last hearing when my parents realized they had no other choice. At last, their facade broke. In her closing remarks, the judge was very severe, describing their behavior as a calculated betrayal of both their daughters and their own parents' last desires. She said, in particular, that they showed a startling degree of moral decay in their laughter at my first legal threat. In the end, the forensic analysis showed that my parents had been preparing this heist for more than a year before to my grandmother's passing. They had methodically made up fictitious family contracts and documented fictitious discussions regarding my voluntarily relinquishing the MBA fund. According to the court, their actions were considerably worse because of their premeditation. The fines were hefty. In addition to returning my MBA money plus interest, they were mandated to pay punitive damages that nearly doubled the initial amount. The judge justified the severe punishment by pointing to their deliberate malice and repeated attempts to mislead the court. The fascinating part is that my parents had to sell their home, yes, the home they inherited from my grandparents, in order to pay these charges. Nobody failed to notice the irony. They have significantly downgraded from their previous way of life to renting a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. Their decline in society has been dramatic. The membership in the country club? Retracted. Where do they sit on different community boards? Lost. The social network that my mother built over the course of several decades has fallen apart. It turns out that upper middle-class suburban society does not tolerate stealing from children and lying about it. The repercussions on the job have been just as bad. My father, who took great satisfaction in his business reputation, was compelled to retire early. When someone has been legally shown to have taken from their own child's inheritance, no one wants to do business with them. At local businesses, his former co-workers now steer clear of him. After leading local charity organizations, my mother was forced to leave her volunteer posts. The last straw was when they were asked to resign from all leadership positions at their church, of which they had been active members for 20 years. They've become social pariahs in their own community, Uncle Jake said. Ashley and Nathan's relationship is arguably the most noteworthy development. Their ideal home? They went crazy. When the mortgage firm learned that the down payment was made with stolen money, they revoked their approval of the loan. They are currently dealing with their own legal problems as a result of their willful acceptance of stolen funds. Ashley's career has completely collapsed. In their formal statement, the school board cited ethical concerns and loss of community trust as reasons for their unanimous decision to remove her as principal. Since the news has gone viral in the local school community, she is now having trouble finding even entry-level teaching jobs. Nathan's situation wasn't any better. He was placed on administrative leave by the zoo while his involvement in the financial misbehavior was looked into. Even though he wasn't personally responsible for the money theft, his signature on loan documents that contained false information has created ethical questions. The strain was too much for their relationship to handle. Nathan left their apartment last week. He accused her of being like her parents, while Ashley accused him of not being more supportive during the situation. They are currently in the process of calling it quits on their engagement. Uncle Jake's plan of total social and legal ruin was more successful than anyone could have predicted. He set up a family meeting when my parents attempted to make one more plea for family loyalty. Not to patch things up, but to explain what they had done in front of the whole extended family. He provided a timeline of their deceit at this discussion, detailing the false documents they produced and the lies they told different family members. Disgust was the universal response. A number of family members who had first attempted to resolve the conflict now publicly denounced my parents. The meeting essentially put an end to any remaining family support they may have had, and the most telling moment occurred when my mother's sister, who had always been one of their closest supporters, rose up and stated, "I don't even recognize who you are anymore. In my case, I've come out stronger than before. Along with significant damages, my MBA fund has been fully refunded. In addition to receiving my money returned, I was accepted into a prestigious MBA program on a merit scholarship." In his letter of reference, Mr. Thompson praised my exceptional skill and integrity in handling this problem. My employer has been really helpful. They have granted me permission to take a leave of absence from the MBA program, and have even promised me an executive post after I graduate. Your handling of this situation demonstrated that you possess the strength and judgment required for senior leadership, Mr. Thompson informed me. Uncle Jake is now regarded as a real mentor. After I finish my MBA, he is already discussing possible investment opportunities with me and has introduced me to his business network. He told me, "Your grandparents would be proud of you because you've shown that you have the backbone for business." I've relocated to an upscale apartment in a gated complex that keeps my folks at bay. The doorman is instructed not to let them in and has their photos. Their phone lines and emails have been blocked, and all efforts at communication now go directly to our legal department. The last turn of the blade? Nathan used to work at the zoo, which is just next to my parents' new apartment. They must view the location that symbolizes the start of their demise every day. According to Uncle Jake, karma can be humorous at times. Someone in their social circle wrote me an anonymous letter yesterday. It seems that my mother stays at home most of the time, only out for essentials. It has been reported that my father spends hours sitting by himself at a nearby coffee shop, gazing off into space. The social calendar they used to have is now absolutely vacant. I find myself thinking about my grandmother's statement, "Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you," as I get ready to begin my MBA school. She was correct. With her foresight and Uncle Jake's assistance, I've now not only safeguarded my education fund but also imparted a lifelong lesson to my parents. That concludes this tale. I appreciate everyone's support along this journey. I'm at peace knowing that justice has been done, even though I never wanted things to end this way.